Therefore, coming into the world, he says, sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you have prepared for me. Hebrews 10:9 through 10. He then has said, behold, I have come to you to do your will. He takes away the first that he may establish the second, by which you will have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. God's will is first to have a body for Christ. The second aspect of God's will is to have Christ as the replacement for all the sacrifices and offerings, so that we may enjoy him as our all and in all. The sacrifices and offerings meant everything to the Old Testament saints. However, Christ came to do God's will by replacing all the sacrifices and offerings in order that he could be everything to us. Collected Works of Witness Lee, 1989, Volume 1. The Practical and Organic Building Up of the Church. Hebrews 10:1 through 12 indicates that Christ is the fulfillment of all the offerings. He came to do the will of God, verse 7 and 9. That is to replace the sacrifices and offerings which were types with himself in his humanity as the unique sacrifice and offering for the people. The conclusion of the New Testament, page 462. The word in Psalm 40:6 through 8 is actually the word of Christ, as quoted by Paul in Hebrews 10:5 through 7. The prophecy in Psalm 40:6 through 8 is one of the greatest revelations concerning the all-inclusive Christ and the commission that God committed to Christ in his first coming through incarnation, which was to put away the animal sacrifices of the old covenant and to establish himself in his body as the sacrifice of the new covenant. In this prophecy, Christ comes through his incarnation to terminate God's old economy and initiate God's new economy, his New Testament economy, by replacing the animal sacrifices and establishing himself as the unique sacrifice of the new covenant. As such a sacrifice, Christ is the factor that enacts God's New Testament economy, that he may be its centrality and universality for the producing and building up of the church as his organic body, which will consummate in the New Jerusalem. Hence, Christ has changed the age for the consummating of God's new creation out of God's old creation. 2 Corinthians 5:17, Galatians 6:15. His changing of the age is greater than the creation of the universe mentioned in Genesis 1, Psalm 40, verse 6, footnote 1. In the Old Testament, there are 5 main categories of offerings: the burnt offering, the meal offering, the sin offering, the peace offering, and the trespass offering. Hebrews 10:5 says, sacrifice and offering you do not desire, but a body you have prepared for me. But God prepared a body for Christ so that he could offer himself to God to replace all the offerings. This was God's will, which Christ came to do. Now the sacrifices and offerings are no longer needed because they have been replaced by Christ. Christ today is all the offerings, and he is all the sacrifices. Christ took away and replaced all the Old Testament types and established himself to be the second. Hebrews 10:9. As the second, Christ is everything. Christ replacing of all the Old Testament sacrifices and offerings, taking away the Old Testament types and establishing himself as everything to us was God's great will. By this will we have been sanctified through the offering of Christ's body, once for all, to enjoy and partake of him as our everything. Verse 10. What is the will of God today? The will of God is simply to enjoy Christ, to live a life according to God's heart and will, is to have Christ as everything to us and live by Christ. God's great will for us is to be a part of the body, enjoying Christ as everything. Collected Works of Witness Lee, 1989, Volume 1. The Practical and Organic Building Up of the Church, page 275 through 277.